Have you ever wondered if Yahweh was known beyond the borders of ancient Israel? What if his name, his presence, and his worship reached people long before the nation of Israel even came into existence? Think about it. Before Moses stood on Mount Sinai, before the tablets of the Ten Commandments were etched in stone. Even before Jacob became Israel, there were whispers of Yahweh echoing through time. So, who were these ancient people who knew his name? How did they come to worship the God we now associate with Israel? And what does this tell us about God's bigger plan for humanity, a plan that stretches beyond borders, nations, and timelines? This is the mystery of the worship of Yahweh before Israel. And trust me, what you're about to discover might change how you see the Bible forever. Before we dive in, go ahead and hit like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments. We love hearing from you, and your questions just might shape a future video. Let's explore this mystery together. Alright, let's start at the heart of it all. Who is Yahweh? You might remember the powerful moment in Exodus chapter 3. Moses stands before the burning bush, trembling, unsure, and full of questions. And he asks something so human. "What is your name?" And God answers with a phrase that still sends chills down the spine. "I am who I am," Exodus 3:8. It's deep, eternal, unshakable. Then, in the very next verse, God tells Moses, "Say this to the people of Israel. Yahweh, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you." This moment is often seen as the grand revelation of God's name to his chosen people. But what if this wasn't the first time Yahweh's name had been spoken or known? Let's rewind the clock, way back before Moses, before the Exodus, even before Abraham. The Bible gives us tantalizing clues that the worship of Yahweh was unconfined to one lineage or one moment in time. In Genesis 4:26, we read, "At that time people began to call on the name of the Lord." The Hebrew word used here for Lord is Yahweh. This is happening generations before Abraham, in the time of Adam's grandson. But it doesn't stop there. Remember Melchizedek. This mysterious figure appears in Genesis 14, blessing Abraham in the name of God Most High, creator of heaven and earth. While he doesn't use the name Yahweh explicitly, his worship of the one true God aligns perfectly with what we know of Yahweh's character. And what about Job? This non-Israelite man from the land of Uz worshipped God with a devotion that puts many of us to shame. Throughout the book of Job, we see him referring to God by various names, including Yahweh. This suggests that knowledge and worship of Yahweh extended beyond the confines of Abraham's family. But here's where it gets really interesting. In Exodus 18, we meet Jethro, Moses' father-in-law. He's a Midianite priest, not an Israelite. Yet, when he hears about all that God has done for Israel, he exclaims, "Praise be to Yahweh, who rescued you from the hand of the Egyptians and of Pharaoh." How did Jethro, a non-Israelite, know about Yahweh? These examples challenge our assumptions about when and where the worship of Yahweh began. They suggest that God's revelation of himself wasn't limited to one chosen people, but was far more widespread than we often realize. So, what does this mean for us today? It paints a picture of a God who has always been reaching out to humanity, not confined by national or ethnic boundaries. It reminds us that God's plan of redemption is cosmic in scope, stretching back to the very beginning of human history. This broader understanding of Yahweh's worship also sheds light on some puzzling passages in the Bible. For instance, when God speaks to Abraham in Genesis 12, promising to make him into a great nation, he doesn't introduce himself as a new unknown deity. Instead, there's an assumption that Abraham already knows who Yahweh is. Similarly, when Moses returns to Egypt and tells the elders about his encounter with God, they don't ask, "Who is Yahweh?" Instead, they bow down and worship. This suggests that the name and concept of Yahweh weren't entirely foreign to them, even after generations in Egypt. But if the worship of Yahweh was more widespread, why does the Bible focus so much on Israel? Well, God's choice of Israel doesn't negate his work among other peoples. Rather, Israel was chosen to be a light to the nations, to carry the knowledge of Yahweh to the ends of the earth. This understanding also helps us make sense of prophecies like Malachi 1:11, which declares, "My name will be great among the nations, from where the sun rises to where it sets." This isn't just about future evangelism. It's a recognition that Yahweh has always been at work among all peoples. Now, you might be wondering, if Yahweh was known beyond Israel, why don't we see more evidence of this in ancient history? Well, remember that much of ancient history is lost to us. What we do have often focuses on the grand empires and their gods. The worship of Yahweh, especially in its early forms, might have been more personal, less institutionalized, and thus less likely to leave major historical traces. Moreover, as polytheism became dominant in many cultures, the worship of the one true God may have been preserved only in pockets. In families and small communities that maintained the ancient traditions. This brings us to an important point. The uniqueness of Yahweh in a world of polytheism, where gods were often seen as limited, capricious, and tied to specific locations or peoples. Yahweh stood out. He was the creator of all, sovereign over all nations, and concerned with justice and righteousness for all people. This universal aspect of Yahweh's character is evident throughout the Old Testament. Think of Jonah, sent to preach to Nineveh, or Daniel, serving God faithfully in the courts of Babylon. These stories show that Yahweh's concern and authority extend far beyond the borders of Israel. So, what does all this mean for us today? First, it reminds us that God has always been at work in the world, even in places and times where we might not expect it. It challenges us to look for God's fingerprints in unexpected places, to recognize His work beyond our own traditions and communities. Second, it underscores the universality of God's love and plan for humanity. From the very beginning, God has been reaching out to all people, inviting them into relationship with Him. This should inspire us to look beyond our own cultural and religious boundaries, to see all people as potential worshippers of Yahweh. Finally, it gives us a new appreciation for the continuity of God's plan throughout history. The God we worship today is the same God who revealed himself to Adam, to Noah, to Abraham, and to countless others whose names we may never know. His character remains constant, his love unchanging, his purpose unwavering. As we close, I want to challenge you to think about how this broader understanding of Yahweh's worship might change your perspective. How does it affect your view of God's work in the world? How might it influence your interactions with people of different faiths or cultures? Remember, the story of Yahweh's worship is still being written. We're part of that story, carrying the knowledge of the one true God to our generation and beyond. So let's embrace this grand narrative, recognizing that we serve a God whose love and purpose have always been bigger than we imagined. Thank you for joining me on this journey of discovery. If you found this video enlightening, please like and share it with others. And don't forget to subscribe for more explorations of faith, history, and the Bible. Until next time, may you be blessed with a deeper understanding of the God who has always been reaching out to all of humanity.